attraction simply because she was so rich. The email notification was on my phone. My return flight to Vienna the very next day. My apartment, my new life. It really was there, waiting for me. I brought it all up before me in my mind, drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen, dressing and getting on the underground to the kindergarten where I worked, late afternoons in the cafes, evenings with Jakob and friends. I called it to myself and felt its warmth fill me, then expand outwards. It radiated through Charlotte and the others, and Charlotte's £1,000,000 house in Clapham that her parents had bought her. I separated Charlotte from my envy for just a moment. I looked at her across the table, at her face as she lifted the bottle of wine and brought it towards my glass, the light freckles over her nose and the top of her cheeks. And for a moment I thought, maybe we are all helpless. Maybe we are all hostage. I think Kata was helpless and hostage from the beginning to the end of her life. And she was the richest of us all. Part 1. Courchevel. 1. I first worked for Kata when I was 22. I had done a few jobs for a tutoring agency here and there in London when they told me about a 2-month homeschooling job abroad. Sure, sign me up, I said. But to be honest, I didn't think I would actually go. February felt ages away. We were in November, and I was sure something better would come along by then. One of my brief internships would have turned into a glamorous job on a magazine, complete with invitations to parties and fashion shows, maybe even an expense account. I said yes to the tutoring job as an insurance policy, but really, it was like the certainty I have whenever I buy a lottery ticket. I'm going to win, I always think matter-of-factly. Already planning where I'm going to buy my house, considering even the practicalities. I like that street because it's near a pretty park, but it's quite far from the tube. But then I suppose if I've won the lottery, I can take taxis. A combination of magical thinking and, we can put it more boldly if you want, entitlement made me certain things would go my way. Well, they didn't. But my belief in my future burned bright in those days. I decided to embrace the tutoring job as an interesting interlude before I returned to my real life. Real life was in London. That's where everyone went after leaving university, and I followed. It wasn't like I had any intention of going back to Totnes, the small town in Devon where I grew up, kicking around in Doc Martens, throwing stones into the River Dart. And I hated being in the house with Mum. I'd know it from her very first sip, that look in her eyes, glassy and belligerent. Beer or wine, never spirits. So, no to all that and yes to London. I'd been spoiled forever, anyway, for a small town like Totnes, first through my scholarship to the boarding school, where I'd mingled for 5 years with the daughters of bankers and interior designers and diplomats, and then by Bristol University, where I'd sat around in high-ceilinged flats in Clifton and summered at friends' houses in the south of France. Along with my peers, I now had a horror of the provincial. London was where life waited. But even so, it was kind of exciting. When the time for the homeschooling job came around, packing up my suitcase and my flat share in Lewisham, black mould oozing around the mirror in the bathroom, wondering, where am I off to? What will my bedroom be like? Imagining immaculate white linen, pillows like clouds. And 2 whole months of not having to think about going to the supermarket, queuing for the bus, the cleaning rota, all the daily administration. No. I'd teach this kid for a few hours. Easy. And after that, I'd be free. I'd lie on my cloud bed and read. I'd roll around in the luxury. And I did feel very cosmopolitan, flying off to Geneva for a job. This will be a holiday of the senses, I remember thinking to myself, when the driver opened the door of the blacked-out Jaguar and I got in and smelled the leather, put my hand on its slick surface. We drove through the French Alps, way up high to the ski resort, Courchevel 1850. I'd never been to a ski resort before. The scene presented itself through the tint of the Jag's windows, chocolate box chalets, snow packed cosily on wooden eaves. We drove through the resort and up a short winding road, and then we turned into their place. It was different from the wooden chalets, the same.